Hey, Derek1231. You're up for some inspired philosophy? He's going live with JMD Apologetics soon. Okay, Lucifer Almighty, you're getting too rich. Another 1,000 Pine Points for you. You must be up to... I would have to check my records. Sorry to jump, but I have to tell you, I think he's been stealing Pine Points. I asked for Pine Points, he gave me like 10,000. I gave 10,000 Pine Points to who? Can we pool Pine Points and put this offer from PineCreek to the test? No pooling. Come on, you got to read the fine print in the contract that you guys signed. It's like clear. Like, you have to be a U.S.-born citizen. No, I'm kidding. But you cannot be my relative. Yeah, that would be nepotism. I want to... hey, Reed, welcome. I want to talk about street epistemology first. I know a lot of you guys don't care about this, but to me it's fascinating. I'm going to use the word paranoia. And I want to defend my friend Anthony Magna Bosco a little bit. And I want to show video proof, evidence. Oh, I shouldn't use the word proof. I'm going to show video evidence to show that guys like Koukl are wrong at worst and misleading at best. And what they have to say about people like me, like Anthony Magna Bosco, like Reed, Nice Wonder in the chat. We're actually pretty nice guys, and we're not out to purposely hurt people. And if Christianity is true, there should be nothing to worry about. Now, this is the part where, I used my background being a Christian for 30 years. There's going to be a lot of Christians who will empathize with that and say, yeah, Doug, you're right. If Christianity is true, we got nothing to worry about. Nobody can take a child out of the Father's hands. That's in the Gospel of John. And so when I hear about guys like Gregory Koukl, who's an apologist for STR, what does it stand for? Someone should tweet to Amy, the call screener who I talked to. She owes me, she didn't promise, but I think she owes me to come on here and talk to me. But someone should tweet her. Reed, you can tweet her and tell her I'm going live about her boss, Greg Koukl. Here it is. Stand to reason. Building a foundation for building ambassadors. And he starts his article like this. Consider this scenario. An atheist engages two Christians on a sidewalk, and he begins to gently and genially engage them about their beliefs. Their initial, breezy assurance begins to fade, however, as they falter in the face of carefully worded questions about the things they think they know by faith. The atheist gives no evidence for atheism. He gives no evidence against Christianity. Instead, he only does one thing. He asks questions about faith as a way of knowing. He remains calm and friendly as the discussion closes. But by the time one of the Christians is visibly uncomfortable. Now, for a lot of Greg Koukl's listeners, who are probably a little bit on the older side, maybe my age or older, and they're visualizing their own child being snared, being roped in, being manipulated by an evildoer, someone who's under the command of the evil one, under the power of Satan. Now, conservative Christians like Greg Koukl, they believe this stuff. And so they are very worried. And not to sound too cynical, but when you have this type of fear and worry about your youth leaving the fold, leaving Christianity, my goodness, that gives you incentive to donate and give money to apologists. Yeah, that's too cynical, right? This scenario is not a piece of fiction, though. I watched the actual conversation, sad saga. Okay, I'm going to Did you really watch it, Greg Koukl? Did you watch all of it? Because I'm going to show you something soon. Unfold on YouTube. The companion follow-up video documented. Okay, so he links it, and I have it right here. In fact, it's actually a two-part thing, and he links it to the second part, not the first part. So anyhow, the companion follow-up video document is the devastating consequences. Documented the devastating consequences of the atheist approach. Dun, 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 devastating. One of the Christians, now an atheist, showing that it works, thanks his challenger for helping him see the irrational errors of his religious ways. Why is it devastating to leave Christianity, Greg Koukl? Why is it devastating to leave Christianity? Now, if you're a Christian listening, the first thing that will pop in your head is, what's the first thing that pops in your head? If you're Greg Koukl's type of Christianity. It's not because it's true. It's because you're scared of hell. And then secondly, you're scared of all it's going to lead to moral debauchery and mistakes and whatever else bad things that will happen. Which, by the way, I know Daniel. In fact, Daniel, if you're in the live stream chat, make yourself known. I know Daniel about what this video, who it's talking about. You know, his life has not fallen apart after leaving Christianity. He's doing just fine. He's doing okay. Conversations like this are not isolated events. More and more atheists are taking tactical cues from atheist philosopher Peter Boghossian, who has written a book titled A Manual for Creating Atheists. That's a great title if you want to scare theists, especially Christians like Greg Koukl. It is essentially a tactic book for atheists, and the purpose of the book is to help other atheists make an atheist out of you. That's right. Boghossian calls his approach street epistemology. His strategy is absolutely unique, though since he has no interest in making the case in favor of atheism, there's no good arguments for atheism, Greg Koukl. I have a video on that. You can check it out. Or against any other particular religious claim. It's not necessary. The Achilles heel of all religion, according to him, is faith, and that is his singular target. Christians have a faith virus, and his goal is to kill it. Well, Greg Koukl, don't you believe that when Christians, I know you know they're out there, some Christians define faith as just believing, right? Even if you don't have evidence, you just believe, kind of like the blind faith. Some Christians actually believe that's what faith is, right? Now, if Peter Boghossian is defining it that way, wouldn't you agree with Peter Boghossian that that's a bad definition of faith, and that it's a virus that needs to be killed? Oh, yes, Salim is mentioning I'm eventually going to be talked about on JMD's YouTube channel, Inspiring Philosophy and JMD. I don't think they liked the video I put out recently about using my thought experiment against the cumulative case argument. So let me see. Are they going yet? No, they're not going yet. I might ask to go on there, and if I do, I'll just keep streaming live here, and then you guys can watch. If they don't allow me to come on, I might stream it anyhow, but in order to not break the fair use, I'm going to comment in between. I'm probably going to speed it up so I can comment in between and add value to it. So hopefully they don't mind that. But let's keep going with Greg Koukl here. Mangling faith. I keep putting scare quotes around the word faith for a reason. Quotes are often used by writers to signal to the reader that a word is being used in an odd, specialized, unconventional way. That is what Boghossian has done with the word faith. It's a common rhetorical use to redefine words to debate in a way that favors one's own position. Mangling the definition of faith is a trick used almost universally by atheists recently to illicitly gain universally used to illicitly gain advantage in their assault. Now, Mike Winger uses the word attack, but he uses the word assault. This atheist, though, builds an entire attack plan against this ploy. So if Christianity is true, and if you're a Christian listening, there's nothing to be worried about. There's, even if, in fact, assaults and attacks should be the default position, because the gospel is foolishness to those who are perishing. This is, if Christianity is true, you should expect assaults, you should expect attacks, you should expect the persecution. None of this is surprising. All of this should be expected from those whose eyes have been scaled over. Here's Boghossian's definition. A Christian's faith is nothing more than belief without evidence, a habit of pretending to know things you don't know. After all, Boghossian asserts, if one had sufficient evidence to warrant belief in a particular claim, then one wouldn't believe the claim on the basis of faith. Faith is a word one uses when one doesn't have enough evidence to justify holding a belief. Now, I actually think, I wish we knew the exact results of this, because whenever there's polls taken on this, it can be skewed to whoever's asking the question. But I wonder if you were to truly randomly take Christians out of the United States randomly and ask them to define faith, I wonder how many of them would be closer to Boghossian's definition and how many of them would be closer to Greg Koukl's definition. They're live in 5. We'll see. Salim, I'm in no rush because I can play it at 2x or any speed I want to catch up. But yeah, you can let me know here, Salim, as soon as they start talking about me. Of course, the second element in Boghossian's definitions, pretending to know things you don't know, would be uncontroversial consequence of the first element, belief without evidence, if the first was sound. But it's not. That definition may do for... Okay. This is... excuse me. Professionals use the cough button. This definition may do for Mormonism, smack, or Islam, smack, or Hinduism, smack, or Buddhism, smack, but it will not do for Christianity. The reason is simple, that it's not the biblical view of faith. Okay, this is what I have to say about this. When guys like me are talking to people about what they believe, I'm talking to a person. I'm not talking to a religion. So this is going to probably tick some people off. But when Anthony Magna Bosco is talking to Daniel about why he believes, and if Daniel gives him an answer, and let's say the answer involves the word faith, it does not matter at all what the Christian definition of faith is. Not one bit. You're talking to a human being who's using a word in a certain way. Now, I understand that Christians might say, but the true definition is this. Okay, that's fine. But isn't Christianity about meeting a person where they're at? Ooh, I love using their own language against them. Christianity is about meeting a person where they're at. Isn't that what Jesus would do? To try to understand where they're coming from? This is what guys like Anthony Magna Bosco do. They ask them first, what is their main reasons for belief? And if they do bring up faith, how they define it. And you want evidence of that? I have it. Let me... Let's see the trickery of Anthony Magna Bosco at work. I got timestamps here. Now, you guys can do this on your own. If you're a Christian listening, you can bring up the transcript in any YouTube video, and you can do a Control F for find, and you can find certain keywords like faith or define. So let me back it up here. Let me pump up the volume.
It seems like...
So basically, this is Daniel. A lot of you in the live chat know him. This was, I think, done 3 or 4 years ago. And here's Anthony Magna Bosco talking to him about why he believes.
You really thought about it. Okay, how about you, Daniel? What's that main reason why you think it's true?
It all boils down to faith. And I know that's the worst thing you can hear as an atheist. I can attest to that because I was an atheist myself before I came to Christ.
How do you define an atheist?
How do I define an atheist? I would say one who recognizes...
Now, I want to, if anybody's a Greg Koukl fan, please, if you have the ability to, let Greg Koukl know that in this example that Greg Koukl himself cited in his reference at the bottom of his article, for the record, the first time faith is brought up, it's by Daniel, not by Anthony Magna Bosco. And Anthony Magna Bosco just simply asked him a question that every Christian should be comfortable with is, why do you believe?
Recognizes, I would say, because, there's some people who are agnostic, and I think that's different because they're still searching. I would say an atheist is someone who is sure that there is no spiritual or religious phenomenon out there, that anything can be explained through the powers of science or like observable evidence.
Okay. Just as a side note, I respectfully disagree with your definition of that, but I don't think it's relevant to this point.
Okay.
But you base this on...
Now, this is interesting because I previewed this, I watched this a long time ago, but I just caught it that Anthony is actually stating his own position. He's saying, hey, I respectfully disagree with you here. That in Greg Koukl's mind, I think that should conjure up a little bit of respect, that this is just not all questions. It's saying, hey, I thank you for your answer, but I disagree with you.
Faith, is that right?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay, this is important. Listen to this. So the charge is Greg Koukl that scheming, conniving, manipulation, we're trying to get you to say the word faith. I showed you clearly, Anthony asked him for the reason. Daniel proposed the word faith. Now listen.
I think it's relevant to this point.
Okay.
But you base this on faith, is that right?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
And so, like I said, it's kind of hard to define
why would you say that I know that atheists would take issue with that word?
Well, I'm saying that because I was an atheist myself at one point in my life.
Was there a point in your life where you scoffed at people who used faith to be certain?
Absolutely, yeah.
What's your definition of faith?
You hear that? Greg Koukl, again, if there's anybody who has any access to Gregory Koukl, if you're a listener of his, if you have his email, if you have his ear, if someone can give this to Amy, his call screener, this is the video that Gregory Koukl decided to cite, and we have the interlocutor bringing up the word faith first, and we have Anthony Magna Bosco asking him for the definition.
Because I was an atheist myself. At one point in my life.
Was there a point in your life where you scoffed at people who used faith to be certain?
Absolutely, yeah.
What's your definition of faith?
Faith would be an unhindered belief in something. Just having that 100% confidence, like you said, just being completely sure, despite opposing viewpoints.
Okay, so I could go on, but this is the reason why Daniel gave Anthony Magna Bosco why he believes. Anthony asked him to define it. He did. Daniel's describing it at this point in his life as just being very confident despite evidence to the contrary. You just hang on. It's like I'm imagining someone hanging on to a rope, that's suspended between in a canyon, and you're hanging on for bare life. Now, what I just played for you, I read, for those of you who came late, I read the setup scene that Greg Koukl gave for what street epistemology is about, how they manipulate, connive. These are some of the words he used. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But a negative outlook, right? These guys are devastating consequences of leaving Christianity. And I showed that, hey, Anthony Magna Bosco is asking a question that every Christian, 1 Peter 3:15, should be able to answer. Why do you believe this stuff? The person gives an answer of faith. Anthony Magna Bosco asks, what does that mean? They give an answer. Is there any manipulation or trickery going on here? Oh, Anthony's in the live stream chat, I see. Welcome, Anthony. So no, I don't think there's any manipulation here. And I just want to reiterate this point. When you're talking to a person, you're not talking to a religion. So it does not matter what the true definition of faith is, if there is one. Because even Christians disagree on certain aspects or certain nuances of it. Because you're meeting the person where they're at. And I know this language resonates with Christians. You're meeting the person, you're letting them talk, you're letting them explain, you're letting them describe why they believe what they believe. Okay, let's go on. I'm painfully aware that a number of Christians who just believe is legion. It's rife. It's for them, faith is indeed a leap, a belief without evidence. I don't think that's exactly what Daniel said there, but it's probably in the same on the same spectrum. Let's skip down. If one wants to find fault with the Christian version of faith, he must go to the Christian source, the Bible. Well, okay, but the issue here is we're talking to a human being. We're not talking to a Bible. We're not talking to a religion. We're talking to a human being who's giving their reasons for belief. Boghossian has anticipated this objection, of course. When pressed, he writes, the faithful will offer vague definitions that are merely transparent attempts to evade criticism or simplistic definitions that intentionally muddy the meaning of faith. Okay, I want to get down to here it is. How Gregory Koukl says what you should do, what the Christian should do. What's the strategy when you meet Anthony Magna Bosco or myself? Boghossian's game plan has three elements. First, he instructs his disciples, like Anthony and myself, to avoid facts. Do not bring particular pieces of evidence, facts, data points into the discussion. How many times have you guys been in a discussion where facts are flying back and forth and nothing is accomplished? It's just a complete waste of time because oftentimes what you're talking about is not the real reason for the belief. I've tried to explain this, and the best way I can explain this to Christians is to say something like this. Okay, let's assume Christianity is true. I'm not a Christian. Someone wants me to be a Christian, so someone's evangelizing to me. Let's say I'm not a Christian. Hypothetically, let's say I'm not a Christian because I was hurt in the church. Why in the world would you spend an hour talking to me about the Kalam cosmological argument? Christians, are you listening? Are you hearing me? That's a complete waste of time, right? Why would you spend time talking about why consciousness has to be immaterial if the real reason why I'm not a Christian is because I was hurt in church? You should talk to me about what's really meaningful for me. This is why Peter Boghossian says stuff like this. Because since human beings are oftentimes emotional creatures who don't change their mind from facts, isn't that pretty obvious nowadays? You get to the heart of it. You get to the root. Second, target faith, not God. Belief in God is the problem. Belief without evidence. Boghossian's version of faith is the problem. Okay, even if Boghossian is wrong on the definition of faith from a biblical perspective, so what? It does not matter. Because you're talking to a human being, not to the Bible, not to a religion. You're meeting the person where they're at. And I just played a clip from the exact video that Greg Koukl used in this article. Did Anthony Magna Bosco force Daniel to say the word faith? No. Did he in any way put those words in his mouth? He simply asked, why do you believe? And Daniel said the word faith. And then Anthony Magna Bosco asked, what do you mean by that? Can you define it? And he, I think later on in the clip, even asks the gentleman next to him. And then later on in the clip, they even talk about it being a method that they use faith to believe this sort of thing. So it's not trying to manipulate the person into saying what you want to hear. Okay. What's his strategy to deal with guys like me and Anthony? Oh, yeah. Second, about target faith, not God. Belief without evidence is the problem. Third, create doubt. Okay, this is, I agree. I like to create doubt. Doubting faith is the goal. Yes, and I think if you define faith the way Daniel did, Greg, I think you would agree that that's a bad version of faith. And Anthony has actually helped Christians. Anthony Magna Bosco helps Christians by showing that definition of faith is not a good way to come to knowledge, if that's how they define it, and if that's how they come to know that God's real and so forth. Christianity is true. Anthony, you should be paying Anthony Magna Bosco for the service he's providing. How's that, Anthony? Focusing on undermining one's confidence in how claims to know what one knows as opposed to what one believes exists. Yeah, we're going to the epistemology. That's true. There are different kinds of doubt, of course. When a person faces formidable evidence against his view, he'll naturally feel dissonance, a conflict of mind causing him to question his beliefs. That's true. In my opinion, this hesitation is called rational doubt. It's a natural part of the process of many conventions, and when appropriate. Okay, I want to get to what Greg Koukl says we should do. Oh, yeah, here. This is about Boghossian and the security guard. Oh, here we go. Street smarts. Okay, so if you're a Christian listening, this is how you should behave around me or Anthony. Now, again, let me preface this just a little bit. I think that you'll forgive me for prefacing this. If Christianity is true, you have nothing to worry about. No one can take the child out of the Father's hand. All things work for the good for those who love God and who have been called according to his purpose. I know these verses, and these verses are powerful to Christians. And if the Christians truly believe them, they should not fear guys like Anthony or myself. Okay, so what should you do as a Christian? First, as a general rule, stop using the word faith to describe your personal investment in what you believe. I've been saying this for years. Okay, that's fine. It's not going to bother guys like me and Anthony if you don't want to use the word faith. I've heard the atheist canard, if you have evidence for your belief, then where's room for faith? Plenty of times. When a Christian says this, he's red meat for the streets epistemologists. Red meat, yeah. Second, in conversation with an atheist, do not let him redefine faith for you. If he succeeds, you're finished. You'll be conceding that your convictions have no basis in fact. Okay, I encourage any Christian who doesn't like street epistemology or Greg Koukl, I encourage them to find a video where someone is doing street epistemology where they define faith for the person. It's probably out there. I just haven't seen it. Find a video, find a clip, send it to me. My email's in the tab in the description box of my YouTube channel. I'm sure it's out there, but find a street epistemologist who actually redefines faith for the person they're interviewing. I would love to see it. I think you're going to search really hard to find it. When you use the word faith, what exactly do you mean? Refuse the faith redefinition. You'll dodge one of Boghossian's most lethal bullets. Like he's using, he's helping the Christian visualize that this is like a bullet. Like Anthony Magna Bosco talking to a Christian is like firing a bullet at them. Like this is, it just reeks of fear. Use the word trust instead. That's what the Greek words, okay, that's fine. We can use the word trust. Though Boghossian warns his disciples to be alert to this move, it is completely legitimate for you to insist that the atheists use your definition of faith. Again, I want to find a video clip where someone refuses to use the person's definition. In fact, do not let them carry on about faith at all. Okay, that's fine. You'll be giving life to a straw man. In my experience over these last few years, I find that the most offensive people are the ones who throw out the word straw man the most. That's not all the time, of course, but if you hear the word straw man coming out of a certain one individual over and over again, or the word attack, you know that they're being defensive. Okay, so third, if you're not entirely sure where a question is leading, don't answer it. Okay, this is where I think Greg Koukl is going to rub against his fellow Christians a lot. And that is, you should have nothing to hide. 1 Peter 3:15, if someone asks why you believe, and even if you suspect, if you're a Christian and you suspect this person is a street epistemologist who's trying to manipulate you in order for you to doubt and leave Christianity, what I'm hearing Greg Koukl say is, don't answer it. Politely refuse to play the game. The moment you feel like the questions might be designed to manipulate you, stop the conversation and ask for clarification before you go any further. Here's how that might look. Okay, so I have no problem with if you're stopping just to get clarification. But if, Greg Koukl, you're saying that if you get the clarification you don't like or whatever, that you should just walk away because you don't want people to leave Christianity, is that what you're saying? Anyhow, Peter Boghossian. Well, if the universe always... this is from the example he gave with the guard, which I didn't read. Generally speaking, when an atheist presses you with questions you're not sure how to answer, always ask for clarification. Here are some examples. Help me out here. What specifically are you getting at? There are probably a number of ways to answer that. Yeah, this is all fine. You asked how I would know if I were delusional. Don't worry if you can't answer all the questions he asks about faith. As I said, street epistemologists are clever. They're clever. Oh, thank you, Greg. They're prepared with particular questions you may not be able to respond in a clear way at the moment. No worries. Don't be afraid. Say, I'll have to give that some thought. Yeah, that's a great answer. But if there's no worries and no reason to be afraid, why write this article? Greg Koukl, if there's no worries and you don't need to be afraid, why are you writing this article? I think you are worried. I think you are afraid, Greg Koukl. Let me repeat that. I'm very confident you're worried. I'm very confident you're afraid because you see guys like this leave Christianity, and it bothers you. Okay. Joe Shrapnel says, have you seen the recent Leighton Flowers YouTube video where he discusses your conversation with Pastor Eli? No, I have not. I didn't know it existed. Thanks for telling me. That was a long time ago. Oh, I remember I got, with Pastor Eli, he's a presuppositionalist, and I got deflated right in the middle of it, but we still went for like 2 hours. Okay, so let's see here. I want to see if Inspiring Philosophy is talking about me now. I think they are.
The evidence. I mean, and this is what I see a lot of these do. They don't want to give a better explanation for the resurrection. They want to play these mind games. They want to psychoanalyze people. They want to like, see, he hasn't, look at him. He's stressing out. And it's like, really? We're going to psychoanalyze someone right in there or something? Let's talk about the actual evidence. And that's what I was trying to get at this point. Can we actually get into the evidence and notice, nope, I don't want to talk about the evidence. I want to get back to this thought experiment I just came up with, or this thought experiment Cam gave me. Oh, why can't we talk about the evidence? Why can't we see a better explanation? Nope.
I think we did talk about the evidence in that thought experiment. What evidence would cause you to believe in the flying man? And he gave all the same evidence, I believe, for the resurrection as he would for the flying man. So we did talk about the evidence. So my main goal with that thought experiment of the flying man was to figure out at what point in the cumulative case would he start to believe that a man could fly.
No, you got to play these epistemic games. And it amazes to me. And Cameron and I were talking about this before. They never want to talk about the evidence. They want to go right to these psychological games.
Did he bring up the hypotheticals and the purposes of that already, or is he going to?
He might. I don't know. It's same stuff. Just keep going.
Oh, this is meta.
It's a very difficult point giving this thought experiment to...
I'm going to pause it there. I'm not sure if I should rewind it to the beginning. I want to add value to this. I just don't want to mirror what they're doing. Let me think about this. Yeah, let me say something about... This actually ties in well with what I just said about Greg Koukl. You notice what Inspiring Philosophy is talking about here. Mike is saying that these are psychological mind games. I think that's what he said, or just hypothetical games. If Christianity is true, what's the problem? What's there to fear? What are you scared of? And now, the reason why I asked the hypothetical I did is because of the evidence. Because the cumulative case is about a whole bunch of pieces of evidence. But guys like me, we know what you're going to say, and you probably even know how I'm going to respond to what you're going to say. So instead of just rehashing the same things over and over and over again, maybe we should combat this from a different angle. Maybe we should talk about these things with a new twist to it. So maybe I will be enlightened or you will be enlightened, or we can just understand each other in a better way. Okay, so I guess what I'll do is I'm going to play it at 1.5 speed, and if they say anything interesting, I'll comment on it.
Convey that we're not encouraging with each step for the person to make a conclusion about whether or not it is history or fiction. But instead we're asking the question, when you read this bit of evidence, which direction does it push it? And just
actually,
they notice that it's
what I'll do is when they talk, then I'll bring up the volume.
No, I wouldn't conclude it was history on the basis of that. But
Okay.
That it should be shifted more to history or fiction from that little thing.
Yeah,
I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
if they mean something else, then fine. We just don't know what they mean. But I don't think
Maybe there's a disconnect. Maybe we're on different pages with Cam and Doug. But if you're going to ask me, where does this make you shift? You're asking me for a conclusion on how I should shift this left.
No. This is where, this is exactly what Cam was saying. Let me rewind it and play it again at regular speed.
Pages with Cam and Doug. But if you're going to ask me, where does this make you shift? You're asking me for a conclusion on how I should shift this left or right.
I'm asking your personal opinion. I'm asking you, let's say tell you that there's a flying man, and you say that's 99% fiction in your opinion. You're 99% confident that this is fiction. And then I say, well, what if I read a page in the book that 500 people saw the flying man? Where does the number go to? Does it go to 100% fiction? Does it go to 98? Where does it shift for you? You're not making any conclusions whether there actually exists a flying man or not. All you're telling me is where it shifts. And the reason why this thought experiment I think is good is because when you apply the cumulative case, those exact reasons for the resurrection onto the flying man, I think most people will show that they're inconsistent and that they won't believe in the flying man, even if it says in a book that 500 people saw the flying man fly. So then if we just add in, someone who didn't like the flying man, saw the flying man fly as well, like to resemble Paul. Okay, now we have two pieces. Does it shift from 99 fiction to 95? Is it becoming more into towards the history side? Probably not.
Yeah.
Can I just say I don't know?
A conclusion.
Why is that?
You can say I don't know, but we're not talking about knowledge claims. In fact, by the way, I should be fair here. Someone can ask for me if James, if you're listening, ask them if I can come on. I'll be willing to talk to them. And no, I'm not psychoanalyzing Mike right now.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, I don't know would be the conclusion. I think would be the most logical conclusion, especially if evidence is being suppressed in the analogy, which is definitely what they're doing in this, because that's the whole point of it.
Knowledge is being suppressed. No, I'm asking you, what is your personal opinion on what would cause you epistemically to say, okay, I'm starting to believe in the flying man now. I'm actually starting to believe this actually happened. What kinds of evidence, how much of it would you need? And when you look at it piece by piece, either in isolation or when you start combining them, does this cause you to shift from saying that the flying man probably flew to probably didn't, or vice versa?
And that's why it's almost a loaded question. Well, it is a loaded question, but...
Yeah, whenever I hear a theist, a Christian say, I've asked a loaded question, I know it's a good question. Because it's a question that they're uncomfortable with.
It's a very loaded question, yeah. And this is why I don't like thought experiments, because as the paper that I just found, which I wish I could have read like a week ago, it pulls up all these subjective ideas that people are imbuing in thought experiments they don't even consciously realize.
Yeah, and actually, let's continue. Maybe we're getting tight here because there's some stuff on that.
I'm more interested in the mission.
I'm reading in the chat right now, a guy named Louis R. says, PineCreek's a loser. He will not even address the evidence. He knows he does not have a chance. He's totally unaware of my channel. I have a whole playlist of talking to guys like well, Cam, and we just did the whole historical thing on the Gospel of Mark, where I dive deep into the evidence.
Would it have shifted you toward fiction, even if it didn't get you all the way there?
Yeah, that's a great point, because many times you just claim Gnosticism. But I'm not asking knowledge questions. I'm not asking what you know.
I'm pointing out an inconsistency in your epistemology, which is how do we know things?
It doesn't matter. I'm ignoring all that. Even if he's right and my epistemology is inconsistent, can we talk about the evidence? Nope, we can never do that. Nope, we're going to keep
No, sure, we can talk about the evidence, Mike. But right now, I'm talking about the cumulative case for Christianity and seeing if you're consistent. Is Mike almost admitting here that he's not consistent?
Is inconsistent? I'm ignoring all that. Even if he's right and my epistemology is inconsistent, can we talk about the evidence? Nope, we can never do that. Nope, we're going to keep playing these mind games.
No, we can never do that. There's a lot of evidence on my YouTube channel of me diving deep into the evidence. So to say a guy like me who never goes to evidence, this is the thought experiment. And you can tell just by Mike right now, his demeanor, he's really defensive. He doesn't like this thought experiment.
The street epistemology issues every time. We can never talk about the actual evidence. And that's what I want to do. I want to talk about the actual evidence. But nope, we're going to keep playing this thought experiment.
Yeah, I think the whole point of it is to psychologically, you're more inclined to say that someone flying naturally is false, even based on the evidence. But of course, the claim isn't Jesus rose from the dead naturally. So that's the biggest problem.
I really want to talk about the evidence. Doug did I think it was like almost a year ago, but he did a live stream on my video called Jesus versus Romulus. Yeah, and I was packing for a trip, and people were Facebook messaging me saying he's saying this in the live stream and that live stream. I'm like, hey.
Oh, by the way, I don't know what he says here. This is my first pass. But I remember that video. It was demonetized for some reason. Boy, I don't understand that. But anyhow, I remember that video, and I remember agreeing with a lot of what Michael says. So I'm very curious to see what he says.
Hey, will he debate me? I'd love to talk to him more about this issues he bring up in the video. Nope, didn't want to do that.
That's because we agreed on a lot of stuff, and it's not interesting to me. I brought up that video for one main point, and that was that I think it was that you will always find differences and parallels between Jesus and guys like Romulus. But my main point was that there was the themes in the air at the time. And if there's any difference that we could debate, Mike, it would be on that. But I think you even agree with me on that. So it would be a very boring debate if we agreed with each other.
Sorry, I don't understand. Why can't we ever just talk about the evidence or the argument itself?
How many times has he said that now?
It bothers me. It's like, why not?
I'm going to be charitable here. I think he does talk about it a lot.
Yes! John from JMD Apologetics. I'm going to want to give out a number that I've never given out before. I think the highest I've given out was 15,000. 16,000 Pine points to John, JMD Apologetics. Let me rewind that. Because Mike has been saying 5 times in a row or something like that, that I don't go into the evidence, or he wants to talk about the evidence. Why doesn't Doug go in the evidence?
I'm going to be charitable here. I think he does talk about it a lot.
Sure. Let's have a debate about Romulus. I'd love to. I've read Livy. I've read Ovid. I've read Dionysius on this. I'd love to talk more about it.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. From our conversations, it really seems like in some of the videos I watch, he doesn't do debates. He says.
I'm always willing to debate that topic if he ever wants to do it.
See,
the reason why I don't do debates is for obvious reasons. And I'm not saying that I would never do a debate, but it definitely doesn't change the minds of the people doing the debating. And it is a lot of work. This is a hobby for me, guys. I know it's a sort of a hobby for Michael too, but I think he wants this to make this his job. I don't know. I could be wrong about this. But to prepare for a debate takes a lot of time and energy. And I rather just talk to people, even though I'm even tired of that now because nothing's new. I'm hearing the same things over and over again. And so, and I think the only use debates have is for the people watching. And even then, maybe only 10% of the people watching, because let's be honest, if you have 100 people who are evenly divided on both sides, probably 49 are going to say the atheist one, 49 is going to say the Christian one, and there might be 2. Oh, maybe it's more than that. Maybe 5, a handful of people who are sincerely on the fence about an issue and might be swayed from an argument back and forth. So yeah, sorry. And James, if you're listening, Modern Day Debate, I'm not saying that your channel's a waste of time. I think it's very entertaining. But if we're really talking about changing people's minds, it's what I was saying earlier when I was talking about Koukl. It's meeting people where they're at. Like, sincerely, Christians listening, if the real reason why I'm not a Christian has nothing to do with the evidence, but has to do with I was hurt in church, why would you waste time talking about Romulus when really you should put your arm around me and help me with my pain? Right? Like, isn't this what Jesus would do? And I'm not saying that's the reason for me, but I'm saying for a lot of people, and I even dare to say most people, that's the issue here. It's either pain or cognitive dissonance, uncomfortableness, existential angst, the desire for explanation, the desire for meaning, purpose, and hope. These are the issues, love, fear. These are the issues that drive people in what they believe. The desire to belong, to be a part of a community. You think most Christians care about Romulus, Mike? And how it may not be a parallel to Jesus? Of course not. Like, maybe, yeah, sure, some will, but very few.
The biggest thing in his epistemology, he'll ask all these hypotheticals, but then he'll actually talk about the evidence. It's not necessarily.
By the way, it's hard for me to keep up with the chat. Did someone ask for me if I can come on? And did they say yes? Tag me if they did. Otherwise, I won't see it.
Inconsistency, but the whole point is pragmaticism. Save as much time in the conversation, which, from my understanding, as part of straight epistemology, it's getting to the core belief of why someone believes something. And just stick with the hypotheticals. Don't actually talk about the evidence because that's almost irrelevant. If that's your epistemology, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so apparently PineCreek is watching this now.
All right, let's just keep going.
Yeah,
Still love you, Doug.
I won't pull this up. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, do you want me on or not?
Okay.
Asking exactly what you said.
I have to watch this later.
This is probably more history.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think if
I'm willing to come.
longer, just keep layering in.
I'm willing to come on if they want me to.
For the piece to find that, still keep this on the fictional side of the way.
I don't know why the audio is so bad.
So why don't we talk about what we actually have in reality, not what.
Like, I almost don't want to play it because it's so bad.
Figure out, so this is another common thing I've used doing this for some reason.
Okay, so Modern Day Debate saying, I mentioned it over there, PineCreek, and Reed Nice Wonder mentioned it too, but I'm not sure they're up for it at the moment. Okay, that's fine. I'm watching 2 chats, one from mine, one from theirs, and people are putting what I'm saying. It's silly. Like, why aren't we talking together, guys? In fact, Mike lives just a 20-minute, 30-minute drive from me. Okay, oh, hang on. I got to turn up the volume.
But they're highly limited. And instead of talking thought experiments, this paper speaks to my soul. Empathy. Yeah. I mean, again, this paper speaks to my soul. Empathy and the limits of thought experiments. They are limited. They're tools, but they're highly limited. And instead of talking about what we have in reality, instead of the atheists or the non-Christians giving a better explanation for the data that we have, they just want to go to hypotheticals. And they're imbued with empathy. They're imbued with their own subjective preferences.
Well, I think the biggest thing with hypotheticals is more like modal logic and the contingency argument, how things could have been. And you can give hypotheticals for that. Like, there's no hypothetical in which, square circle exists and so on and so forth. But, it's possible for somehow in human biology, possibly, that humans can fly naturally. But, of course, if this is the claim of the book analogy, then I don't think it's relevant because it's more of a the resurrection of Jesus is more of a miraculous claim, and that comes down to whether God exists, which we'll get into more a little bit later.
Cam has a comment at one point I really hope we get to, because he says something and I was like, yep, exactly. You kind of hit the nail on the head when I talk about naturalists and their circular reasoning. But yeah, we'll get to it eventually.
Yeah, let me go and play this some more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I have any comments there. It's very painfully obvious that they don't like this thought experiment. and because they rather talk about the evidence. But the thing is, this thought experiment is talking about the evidence, but in a new way. It's talking about the evidence applied to a different claim, not the claim of the resurrection, but the claim of the flying man.
Still say it's fiction. How about you? So we got 5.
Yeah.
So you stated 500 witnesses in solid, right? So in the book, yeah. This is written in a modern Western culture, correct? We don't know. So we don't know, right?
I'm sure, again, I think with this hypothetical, you would know if you're, especially if you work, it's sort of your job to know what section it goes into.
It's like we don't know about this data point, or we don't know about that data point, but I still have to make conclusions based on this limited data. It's so frustrating. Can we talk about reality and the actual evidence we have? You know what
you can just see the angst in Mike right here. He's frustrated that I said, what was the exact question? This is important. I want to rewind
this data point. We don't know about that data point.
What section it goes into? It would know if you're, especially if you work, it's sort of your job to know what section it goes into.
It's like we don't know about this data point, or we don't know about that data point, but I still have to make conclusions based on this limited.
No, Michael, you don't have to make conclusions. This is the whole point of the thought experiment, to not make a conclusion. You don't have to make a conclusion, Michael. What the thought experiment is doing is, imagine a barometer. Like you have fiction, history, and you have a needle in between. Where's the needle going as the evidence comes in? Where does it shift as it comes? You're making no conclusions. You're not saying, you don't have to be scared to be wrong, Michael. There's no fear here. All you have to do is tell me how your epistemology works, and that you would say, oh, I'm feeling it now. I'm feeling like this could be true because of this evidence.
Data. It's so frustrating. Can we talk about reality and the actual evidence we have? You know what he should have done, honestly? Let's talk about the miracle claims attributed to Vespasian, the emperor. Or let's talk about the Salem witch trials, or any other miracle claim.
Let's talk about something that doesn't make me uncomfortable.
Claim from any other religion. Something in reality. No, we can't do that. Because I would say that, no, I don't think there's sufficient evidence. As going off someone like Anthony Flew, who even admitted that the resurrection case has far more evidence than any other four-claim miracle out there. But no.
Yeah, out of all the miracles, the resurrection is the best. That's not saying that much.
We have to build these hypotheticals. And he wonders why I didn't really want to play the game, and I wanted to get more into reality. And this video they did, they were treating it like a gotcha moment. I'm like, really?
Yeah, but I got the best argument from his chat right now. Jerry Penna. Geez, IP is so delusional. So I think they got you there.
Oh, yeah.
What? Did I say IP was delusional?
Totally, yeah.
Delusional. From his chat right now.
Oh,
Jerry
not me,
Penna.
but someone else.
Geez, IP is so delusional. So I think they got you there.
Oh, yeah. Totally, yeah. Yeah. Again,
I don't think IP is delusional, not at all. But I do think he is very defensive right now. I think anybody, let me put it this way. If there's a fence-sitting Christian watching me right now and watching him right now, who do you think is more defensive? You can just see it.
I want to talk about the evidence. If you have a better explanation of the data we present for the resurrection, then sure, let's talk about it. But people that come on my channel, if you just go read the comments, rarely does that come up. It's all just like, no, I already know naturalism is true, so the resurrection could not have happened.
Yep. Okay. Let's go ahead.
I would love to run the exact same thought experiment again with him, but just keep going. So, in fact, I can even tell you the end goal. You can just assume I'm going to trap you, and that this is all just a form of psychological manipulation. But remember, if you're a Christian, you have the Holy Spirit on your side. You should be able to defeat PineCreek. So here's all my cards on the table. I want you to make a list of the 10 best pieces of evidence for the resurrection. Just 10. Can't go crazy. So we'll say 10, and submit it to me. And I'm going to use those 10 for the flying man. And you let me know which pieces have to be in the puzzle for you to believe in the flying man.
Go ahead and continue here.
I mean, at some point we have to become agnostic, right? So we can actually read the whole book. Yeah, at this point I should have said,
not coming to a conclusion. We're just saying that choice fit history or fiction. And
Now, I want to be fair here. If he's talking about the conclusion of it being true, then fine. But generally speaking, my own subjective epistemology based on based on suppressed evidence and so on, limited evidence.
But that's not what he's asking me. That wasn't what he's asking. He's asking me, should I shift it more to history or fiction?
Right. Should you shift it? You're not making a conclusion that it is history or that it is fiction, but you're just shifting it. Imagine like that bookcase or that meter, that dial. Is it going towards history? Is it going towards fiction? There's no knowledge claim being made here.
He's not asking me, should I come to a total conclusion? If I remember the debate correctly, he kept asking me, where would I shift it more to this way or more to that way?
Right.
And at some point, can I just get some more actual evidence? Nope, we can't do that.
No, we were layering them in one at a time. And I forget exactly why we stopped, but I think we stopped because of you, Mike, but maybe not. I could be wrong about that with my memory. But we were talking about evidence the whole time. You were talking about the evidence for the resurrection applied to the flying man.
Yeah. Okay. It's like really late where I'm at. It's 11 o'clock, so I'm like sort of out of it.
Are they done already?
Almost every point in perspective. And you got the creed of a man flying. You got the 500 witnesses of flying. You got the claim itself, and then that's blue. I think.
Oh, that sound quality is bad.
And I are both honest. Working in that library, that book would go 1 inch closer to history fiction at this point.
Again, I have agreed with that point, even in my own series.
So, why?
Again, if all we had was the appearances of the disciples, yeah, I've said that. I've alluded to that. I'm saying it now. If all we had was an early creed, which we do for other religions sometimes. I've been reading a little bit on mystery cults. Again, I completely agree that I would not believe it actually happened.
Thank you. So having a creed like 1 Corinthians 15, if that's all you had, you would not believe in Christianity and you would not believe in the flying man. This is the purpose of the thought experiment. Now let's keep adding stuff in. So let's pretend you had a pot, Mike, like you're making soup, and so you put the creed, the 1 Corinthians 15 creed, into the pot. What do we have to add? What do we have to keep on adding? At what point? What's the soonest point where you would say we now have soup? We now have a justified belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, for each Christian, it will be different. Some Christians will give a different answer. My question was for you personally, where you would stop and say, oh, now I have enough to say I believe in the resurrection of Jesus. Then we take that, now I have enough piece. We look inside the pot. Okay, you said this, you said this, you said this. Now the claim's the flying man, and we put them back in. Do we still have soup? Or do we have to keep on adding more for you to believe in the flying man? It's to talk about the consistency of your epistemology.
I thought this was supposed to be a video against the cumulative case, but they're just focusing on the one thing.
Yeah, I think we should just stick with discussing in the world we live in whether historically, first of all, whether you can historically know miracles. That's a good question. Whether there would be, historically speaking, whether the standards of history would actually affirm what happens, with the Gospels and so on in the cumulative case approach.
Yeah, John, first of all, I want to say I respect you for how you handled this so far from what I heard. Kudos to you. When it comes to the whole idea of miracles, I understand that some non-Christians, or atheists, I should say, have a presupposition against miracles. I understand that. I'm not one of them. But the more important point is that even if there is a God, even if Yahweh exists, resurrections are improbable. Because even if Yahweh exists, it seems like Yahweh has a propensity not to raise people from the dead. Now, I understand that Christians say, well, Jesus is a special case. I get that. But if we are truth seekers and we are just looking at the Gospels, not biased one way or the other, we won't come to the immediate conclusion, of course, that Jesus is a special case that's worth taking seriously, that a God would rise this person from the dead, or other people that I talked about.
It doesn't or shouldn't, is that we're really asking the question, is the claim true that the man can fly? is that more likely if there is a creed about it? But the thing is that we know that.
My first question would
Hold
be,
on.
why would there be a creed about man flying? But it's
Well,
also
it could be part of some religious aspect, but I mean, history doesn't deal in truth. History deals in probability. So,
Yes, I agree.
is it more probable? What's the best explanation? What's the least ad hoc? What's the most plausible? That's what history deals in: explanatory scope, explanatory power.
We're
But Jan
agreed.
was about to get to one of the points I was really excited to respond to, because I remember now.
it was good.
History, creeds about miracle claims occur. Groups of believers believe in miracle claims with a surprising frequency. It's actually not uncommon for people to come to believe things that didn't occur and report that. And so this idea that simply evidence of a group of people believing something could be evidence that their belief is true, that doesn't actually work.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just about to predict that. Yeah, Mike's going to agree with that.
Agree with that?
No.
That's not the thing I want to respond to. He hasn't mentioned it yet, but yeah, I don't just because people believe in something, that doesn't mean we should accept it. No one has ever made that claim. Mike Lacona, Gary Habermas, they've never made that claim. N.T. Wright never made that claim.
Yeah, just because 1 Corinthians 15 says that Paul says that he believed that Jesus appeared to him, and that appeared to 500 people and to other disciples. That doesn't, on its face, that doesn't mean it happened.
Typically, yeah. But let's go ahead. Go on.
It's like, take it off Christianity, and I think every Christianity is a bunch of set of beliefs.
Again, the audio problem is not my fault. I'm not sure why it's so bad on... maybe, John, if you hear this, maybe I can teach you how to do it the better way.
Oh, yeah, something I wanted to ask would be, just for Cameron, what would be an example of this and how close would it be? Like, in actuality, not hypothetically, what are these examples? I'm not saying there aren't any. I just want to be more aware of what these examples would be and how close.
They're great examples. Doug should have appealed to actual events in history. I'm more than willing to talk about miracle claims in other religions and why I don't accept them.
I'm sure you're all ready and prepared to talk about miracle claims in other religions, why you don't accept them. In fact, the answers I've gotten in the past is, well, this is Satan doing, there are miracles in other religions, but it's either God or Satan doing it. Because Michael, I believes in spiritual warfare, and there's demons and angels, and that they all can have influence on the planet. Maybe Michael doesn't believe this, but a lot of Christians do. But I think my flying man example, I think there are, I could be wrong, but I think there are myths and legends or belief systems, not systems, but beliefs of people flying in the past. So it's not, too out there.
I have read a great deal about them, like the Salem witch trials or Emperors of Vespasian, as I mentioned. The miracles of Vespasian, as I mentioned. But no, we deal with hypotheticals.
Do with hypotheticals. What's the difference between dealing with someone who believes Muhammad flew to the moon on a winged horse, or me saying a man went to the Grand Canyon and flew? Like, really? Like, just because I guess a lot fewer people believe in flying men than in Islam, I guess, yeah, you got me there.
Well, could you possibly, if you want, could you give one example that would be sort of like a counter argument from their side, and then why you would not, sort of like you were talking about, those miracle claims and so on?
I mean, the Salem witch trials, they claim there was supernatural events happening. The Salem witch trials, I don't think that actually happened, because it wasn't. The witch trials happened in a very accepting culture, surprisingly.
Oh, the first century Palestine area wasn't very accepting about messiahs, resurrections, weren't they? Please don't be offended, but wasn't first century Palestine area very superstitious? Now, I honestly have no idea what Michael's going to say here, but imagine what Michael's about to say about the Salem witch trials. Imagine him saying it about first century Palestine.
The people basically were coming forward. They were getting popularity. They were getting famous from this idea in their own culture, in their own town, I guess you should say.
Yeah, fake messiahs, because of Daniel 9, there's a lot of fake messiahs, maybe.
That they saw a witch, and
that they saw a god, that they saw a messiah.
Got to explore some of their depraved natures. They got to accuse people they didn't like.
They got to accuse the Jews that they We're Pharisaic.
It doesn't really fit any sort of criteria. So it doesn't fit criteria of embarrassment. No one's being persecuted and still being claimed as a witch. Witches, of course, are being
No one's being persecuted.
but the people making the claims that these people are witches are not being persecuted. They're being celebrated. They're being honored. They're being brought into these mock court hearings and whatnot. Think about the Emperor Vespasian. It's not done in a hostile environment. Everyone wanted Vespasian to be this magnificent, wonderful healer. There's no skeptics that are reported to be converted. There's no church that evolves around it. There's nothing like an empty tomb that you could associate with it.
Okay, but we have examples in society of churches revolving around false religions all the time. He's talking about why we shouldn't believe in I guess, what did he say, the Salem witches and so forth. Just think of Mormonism. Clearly false religion, and grew tremendously, has a movement behind it. You don't think Mormons were persecuted back in the 1800s, 1900s even?
Even as Anthony Flew has noted, the evidence just isn't comparable when it comes to something like the resurrection. So, yeah, we have to judge these.
The reason why guys like Michael and myself can say Mormonism is clearly wrong, probably like 99% wrong, is because the evidence is so good. We have so much that we can use to compare. And say, yeah, no, we have enough here to say it's bad, it's wrong, it's false. But now think about 2,000 years ago, trying to put together what exactly happened based on these texts. And, I could say all the things Bart Ehrman says about these texts, but the fact that, Christians often mention manuscripts, it's, the evidence is not even comparable. Look at all the manuscripts we have. The Christians view this as strong supporting evidence. But in case you are not aware of this, Christians, for the exact same reason you say this is a great supporting piece of evidence, many non-Christians, not just atheists, many non-Christians say that this shows that it's probably false because we can compare these texts because we have so much of them. Similar to the Mormon example I gave you.
These things on a case-by-case basis. On some points, we can say this miracle probably didn't happen. On some points, we could say, well, we don't really know. There's not enough evidence. It's insufficient. So let's just be agnostic about it. And
yeah, the main difference between guys like Mike and me is when they read the Gospels, they think they're reading mostly history. I think they acknowledge that there's parables and so forth, but they think that they're actually reading things that happened in the past. Whereas guys like me, and not just atheists, but Jews, Muslims, other religions, they read the Gospels and they read mostly fiction. This is the difference. So when Michael says, let's talk about the evidence, let's talk about the evidence, let's talk about the evidence, we're coming at it from such a huge gap of understanding that what Michael just sees as evidence of even their, for example, a lot of historians, New Testament historians, or let me say some New Testament historians, they doubt there was even 12 disciples, right? I think Michael would admit that there's New Testament historians who will doubt that there's 12 disciples. Now that's a very small factoid, but it gets to the root of is how much of this is actually just a story versus how much of this is a biography of a real person. And so when it's really hard to talk about the evidence when we can't even agree what the evidence is or what the evidence is actually for. And I think Christians listening right now can empathize with me in that they say, yeah, Doug, just the worldviews are so different that it's really difficult to communicate about these things. And I think Christians get that. And so when I'm using this hypothetical question about the flying man, it is my way of reaching out to Christians and saying, maybe there's a way we can talk about this in a new way that it won't become I failed. It definitely became defensive. But I was hoping in a way that's not defensive, and that we can sort of agree on, like, if you listen to what I did, I as much as possible, I agree with Christians. As many times as I can, I agree with Christians. I agreed with Michael that, no, that wouldn't do it for me either. That wouldn't shift it one way or the other. And we agreed on almost everything. But as soon as it got too far, you could just see Michael just had to cut it off. Like, why are we talking about hypotheticals? Let's go straight to Jesus. Like, why are we doing this? And I think he saw that if I kept on going, and I would love to do this, if we kept on going with that thought experiment, at some point you would say that the top 10 reasons to believe in Jesus' resurrection, if it was applied to the flying man, Michael probably still wouldn't believe it. Especially if we layer them in one at a time, then put them in 2 at a time, 3 at a time. Maybe he would. Maybe Michael would believe it with the top 10. I don't know. But we never got there, so we never found out.
At some points, when I would argue, for example, the resurrection, I would say there is enough sufficient evidence to say this miracle probably did happen. I wouldn't say it's true, because history doesn't deal in truth. History
Yes, I agree with you, Michael.
deals in probability. History deals in what's the least ad hoc. History deals in what's the most plausible. So those are the terms we should be using.
So if history deals with what's more probable, and if we have many examples of people using prior texts to create narratives in history, what's more probable? That the Gospel of Mark is based on mostly what a real person did in history, or that the Gospel of Mark used the Old Testament to build a narrative on maybe a guy that did exist, but a lot of it was just built into the narrative using previous texts. We have many examples in history of people doing that. Didn't the Mormons and the Muslims do that with Christianity? They used the text of Christianity to build new religions. Couldn't this be the case with Christianity, that they used Judaism and the Old Testament text to build a new religion? What's more likely? What's more probable? That, or that a man actually walked on water and raised people from the dead, healed the blind, healed the lame, and rose from the dead himself?
When you say truth, you mean like absolute certainty, right?
Right.
Because honestly, we would believe things to be true and most likely to be true. I think you can still claim those to be knowledge in the historical knowledge, but in the idea of deductible knowledge and or knowledge that you know with absolute certainty. Like if knowledge is just by true belief, then it would be knowledge if the resurrection case is good, which we both would agree it is and argue for. So
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the audio's so bad I can't listen to it, so I'll just wait till when they start talking. If you have questions for me in the chat, feel free to ask, but tag me. Go at PineCreek. I'm reading 2 chats here. Because Christian scholars say so. Historical fact means probable. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I know. I wish.
Shifted it in his mind, I think, very significantly this side, because he said, well, we don't have people flying in our background knowledge. And now,
naturally,
when these questions are continuing,
you can fly.
Oh, by the way, this is the most, I think, important point that Cam made during this whole video.
He's now trying to do this thing where he shifts the book into the middle, because he's saying,
No.
we be agnostic about it, or agnostic generally.
That's not agnostic. That's a problem. I'm not saying it's in the middle. I'm saying I'm agnostic about it.
Okay, you're saying it's not in the middle. Okay, I agree with you, Michael. You're not saying that it's in the middle. You're saying you're agnostic about it. But usually when people say that they're agnostic, would you at least admit that they're kind of saying they're in the middle? They don't know one way or the other. Now, another thing is we're talking about where things would shift. We're not making knowledge claims here. Agnostic usually goes to claims of what you know or don't know, right?
Okay, let me refer to someone, Matt Dillahunty. Okay, he's not in the middle. He says he's agnostic. He says what we should say is we don't know. So for this
Dillahunty
random hypothetical.
Okay.
Depends. I don't know which claim Mike is talking about with Matt Dillahunty when it comes with God. See, here's the main difference between things when we're talking about beliefs versus knowledge claims. Like, I believe there's going to be a recession next year in the United States. but I can still say I'm agnostic about it because I don't know.
For this random hypothetical, I'm saying I don't know. There's not enough evidence for me to say it's in the middle, it's on the left, it's on the right. Middle is not the same as agnosticism. Those are different things. I'm saying I'm not putting myself anywhere on the chart because I would be agnostic about this.
Oh, see this, but this is a cop out to me. I'm going to be very honest with you, Michael. When you say you're not going to put yourself anywhere on the chart, you actually kind of did when we started the thought experiment. You did put yourself on the chart. You said that you would shift it towards fiction. The Flying Man is definitely fiction, most likely fiction. Let's put it that way. And now, when I keep on layering evidence for the resurrection onto the Flying Man, you say, "Oh, wait, hang on, hands off. We just got to be agnostic about it till we get more data." Well, I'm giving you more data, one at a time. This is the problem. It's Christians when they start to doubt. When Christians start to doubt, if they're anything like I was, what happens in their mind is the cumulative case starts flooding in at the same time. In different orders. Okay, I'm doubting Christianity, but cosmological God, there has to be first cause. It has to be God to create everything. Morality, where would morality come in if there's no God? There has to be. But all those, why would they die for a lie? These things just flood in at the same time when they're in a sort of an anxious time of doubt. And so this thought experiment sort of slows that process down and says, wait a minute, let's not let the flooding come in. Let's just let things in one at a time and analyze it. And we can even go two at a time if you want and analyze it. And see if maybe you should be doubting. Maybe you should be doubting the Flying Man. Maybe you should be doubting the resurrection of Jesus. If it's probably not true, then you should doubt it, right? And maybe go on with your life with a different belief system.
Objective hypothetical.
Well, I did a video a while back, 2017, I think. What is agnosticism? And if I can remember correctly, I use a Stanford Encyclopedia definition from Paul Draper, who's an atheist philosopher, so he'll disagree with the agnostic atheist stuff. And basically, he defines it as a proposition. I'm going to butcher this, but he defines it as a proposition that you basically cannot know or make rational justification for whether God or God does not exist. Because he also argues that atheism is a proposition.
Okay.
The claim being over here, why did we just magically shift it to the sudden just because we started evaluating?
And if we are correct about him saying that he's not getting to the actual truth of the matter with our own opinions and so on, this almost seems completely useless to me because it doesn't answer the question whether a man flew and or whether Jesus rose from the dead. It's just based on subjective preference almost, or subjective epistemology, I guess.
Yes, John, you got it. The point of the thought experiment is to figure out why. Remember, this whole purpose of this this video that I made with Michael on Modern Day Debates channel was to see why Michael believes in Christianity, which is a personal thing. Every Christian has a bit of a different testimony, different story. And so I know Michael's big on evidence, so that I knew that's where the focus would be. But I wanted a new way to talk about the evidence as applied to a different claim to see if his personal, subjective epistemology was consistent.
So, anything you want to add to that, or should I just keep going?
Nope, I'm good.
More pieces of text. We should be sticking with the fact that we started over in the fiction section because it was an incredibly unlikely claim.
What he just said there, that's not actually spoiler. But yeah, that's just sort of tangent. Sorry, go ahead.
Let's keep going. Let's finish it up because I could.
Yeah, I need to get some sleep as well.
I skipped ahead a bit.
He goes to items that we have with respect to Christianity. Since we don't know when the Flying Man flew, that said, well, we had 5 different reports reporting it.
It's almost like I'm trying to pull him back to reality.
We don't know what time. There's so many things he could have said that could have told.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I remember. Michael asked, what time frame was this in? Like, does the fact that a Flying Man flew in the year 2019, is that different than Flying Man flew in the year 50? They're both, wouldn't they both be still towards the fictional side of the library?
So one thing is, I think that what we're revealed here is such an unprincipled methodology, because there's nothing that tells us which of these things and what magnitude we need in order for us to believe it. It's just like listing out all the things that we have for Christianity.
Yeah, okay. Let me respond to Doug. Yeah, Doug, it's like I'm trying to pull you back to reality here and get you to focus on actual historical cases we can actually evaluate and study, get out of these ridiculous subjective hypotheticals.
Okay, like for someone who has in his name philosophy, inspiring philosophy, he really doesn't want to talk about hypotheticals, which hypotheticals is a philosophical tool.
Yeah, Doug, it's like I'm trying to pull you back to reality here and get you to focus on actual historical cases we can actually evaluate and study, get out of these ridiculous subjective hypotheticals.
Someone has to find for me an actual case in history where someone claimed a man flew unaided. Because if there is at least one example of that, then my flying man hypothetical is not a hypothetical.
In terms of Cam, yeah, miracle claims are judged on case-by-case basis. There's no sweeping generalizations we can just use to debunk all of them or accept all of them. That's one of the problems Hume makes. Let's talk about the evidence. Can we please talk about the evidence? Nope, never can do that. Nope, we have to talk about the psychology of someone who believes in this, about maybe their epistemology is inconsistent.
Like he's said this now, I think at least half a dozen times.
To talk about these random hypotheticals, they can never give a better explanation. That's why
They can never give a better explanation. I don't know. There seems like for some people they need explanation in order to move on with their life. It's that whole idea. I think, Michael, you're okay with saying I don't know. So if you're okay with saying I don't know on certain things, then why do you even need a better explanation? Why not just say that, you know what, my epistemology says that it's more likely that people made stuff up and wrote stories, used older texts as a basis for their narratives, than a man actually healed the sick and rose from the dead. Why do you need a better explanation other than that?
I was excited to read Gerd Ludemann's book because Gerd Ludemann was going to argue for a naturalistic explanation with regards to the resurrection. I was excited to read John Dominic Crossan, same thing.
Yeah, the main difference, I think, between not atheists and Christians, but Christians and non-Christians who study this stuff, is that the degree of what you read in the New Testament as actually being history and how much of it's actually fiction, storytelling, parables, propaganda, flat out lying. All these options are on the table if you value truth.
A lot of these people online do not want to talk about the evidence. They know naturalism.
Okay. This is probably the 10th time you said this. They don't want to talk about the evidence. Someone in my live stream chat, Michael, asked me yesterday or when Camille came on, and someone said, Camille should talk to Inspiring Philosophy. Hey, and maybe it was even Jesus. Jesus, was it you in the live stream chat? Jesus, was it you who said that? Okay, come on my channel anytime you want, and if you want to dive deep into the textual evidence for the Gospels, I suggest you talk to my buddy Camille. And you can talk about Vespasian, you can talk about Romulus, you can talk about whatever you want with him. I'm sure he'd be up for it.
It's true they know resurrections don't happen.
And I guarantee you it'll be, I shouldn't say this. It'll be entertaining, but it'll be a waste of time.
As Cam said, we know men don't fly.
As far as converting atheists to Christianity or vice versa. So
no amount of evidence could ever convince them anyway. No, why would they be open?
If evidence is so important, if you think, Michael, that evidence is so important for the resurrection, and that's what people should key in onto. We're talking about practically here, pragmatically. Rubber hits the road. Wouldn't you think that a professional historian who had nothing to do with Christianity becomes a professional historian, looks at the evidence for the resurrection, and becomes a Christian? But yet we don't see that, do we? In fact, I've been looking, and some people have been emailing me names and so forth. You look into it, and even their own personal testimony says, no, they didn't become Christians because of the evidence of the resurrection. They became Christians for some other reason. It's not because of the evidence you're talking about. It's because of the evidence of the Holy Spirit in their life, or the evidence of them of some type of coincidence or whatever. This is not all everybody, or for a lot, it's just because they were raised in it. I think you, Michael, you agree with almost everything I'm saying. And so the reasons you're giving now for why you believe in Christianity specifically, these are the reasons you give to not feel stupid for believing what you believe. Then you add on, that a God exists with all the philosophical arguments for God, and say, well, if God exists, then he, of course miracles are probable and all these things will happen. But there are many people who believe in the same God as you do, called Yahweh, and don't believe Christianity is true. There's even Christians who do believe Christianity is true, but don't believe Jesus is God. Man, the evidence is not clear, is it?
Yeah, again. Oh, yeah, just one more thing. They appeal to things nowadays. I think the technology allows, like, if you go to some of these channels like Slapped Ham and Top 15 something, they have all these clips of these apparent supernatural things.
Okay, I think they're done with that video. Salim asks, PineCreek, what about J. Warner Wallace? J. Warner Wallace. I think he's the guy who blocked me on Twitter. I think he blocks most atheists, so I'm not special. But J. Warner Wallace, he became a Christian because his wife became a Christian, in my opinion. He was dragged to church. He became a Christian from listening to, what's the guy's name? I think a lot of Christians be ashamed of it. It's a mega church in California. And he became a Christian at a time when his kids were just growing up, and they, even a lot of atheists, when they get married and have kids, the probability of them embracing religion goes up. And I think this is what happened to J. Warner Wallace. But again, my challenge was to find a historian, someone who became a historian, wasn't a Christian. This is not my challenge. This is actually Camille's. Became a Christian because of the evidence of the resurrection. I need to find that person. So far, I haven't found that person. I also want that person to be alive because I want to interview them. Oh, hi, John. You want to come on? You can. I complimented you a couple times. Yes, thank you. Saddleback Church. J. Warner Wallace became a Christian from listening to Rick Warren, Saddleback Church. I think that's correct. At a time in his life where his wife is a Christian and his kids are growing up, and they, community, that whole thing. It's pretty powerful. The need for community and the need to please one's wife. Yoakum West says, I felt like your conversation with Michael was frustrating because it felt like he was generally evasive and would answer questions you didn't ask, stall, dodge, distract. Do you agree? Well, it's very tempting for Christians to always say that about atheists, and for atheists always to say that about Christians, right? That you didn't answer the question, you're always stalling, dodging, distracting. I've had much worse than Michael. I think for the most part, he answered my questions. He definitely seemed more frustrated today than he did when I actually talked to him. Doug, if you had the choice between killing an innocent person and then immediately forgetting and living your life, or not killing it, what? Let's stay on topic here, Justin T. Yeah, it's an interesting thought experiment, but that you're asking. But let me think about it. What were my compliments to you, John? I forget. I think it was you said something like, "In all fairness, Doug did say blah blah blah," but I forget what it was now. But yeah, something's was wrong with your audio, John. Who do you think is the most effective Christian apologist? Peter Enns. Pete Enns. I don't even know if he calls himself an apologist, though. I think he does. Maybe not. Maybe he calls himself a historian. I actually think I'm all for apologetics. I think there should be more. I think Christianity, I think it will cause more people to leave Christianity. Sorry, John. I really do believe that. But maybe if you use street epistemology, you can lower my confidence on that claim. Yes, I discuss the evidence often. Oh yeah, in all fairness, I think Doug cares about the evidence. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Salim. Thanks, Gerard. What do I think is the toughest question for Christians to answer? Most of the ones I ask. The proof or drown. It's tough, but as you know, it's mostly for fundamentalists, conservative Christians. Questions like Christians who believe in heaven and hell, if they have a loved one who's not a Christian, just to really focus in on how heaven is going to go for them, knowing that their loved one's in hell. Like, I get told that I'm appealing to emotion too much, but these are real questions that impact human beings. If you really believe in heaven and hell and that the person you love deeply is going to be in hell, it's pretty hard for you to worship that God who set this whole system up. Thank you, Thule. I appreciate it. Did you know that some founders of Mormonism recanted? Did I know this? Founders? I'm not sure. If they did, that's fine. Do we know if any founders or first generation Christians recanted? Do we even know they had a chance to recant, Jesus Garcia? Does the word recant even come up when we're talking about the martyrdom of Christianity, first generation? I think one of the toughest questions about the Christian God is, but one that's, I think it should be tough, but a lot of Christians just blow it off. And that is, if God didn't create anything at all, would there be evil, pain, or suffering? Would there be sin, evil, pain, or suffering? Every single Christian on this planet, here's a claim, every single Christian on the planet will say, no, if God created absolutely nothing, there would be no sin, evil, pain, or suffering. But yet we have sin, evil, pain, and suffering that this God could have chose not to create if he has free will and is not needy. Hey, welcome, Lee Eddy. As soon as I stop talking about Michael at Inspiring Philosophy, the more people show up. Thank you, Justin T, for the $5. We'll take the kids to Chick-fil-A just to support the Christians. Oh no, you might not donate anymore if I go to Chick-fil-A. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, if you came late, the first part of this video, this live stream, I talked about Greg Koukl and how he's like, I get the impression he's terrified. He's scared. He's upset about what guys like me are doing to the Christian youth, I guess. And but if Christianity is true, there's nothing to be scared of. Your Christian young people should be able to listen to me and have the power of the Holy Spirit on their side, to not be deceived, to not be manipulated. No one can take the child out of the Father's hand. All things work for good for those who love Jesus. Don't have to be scared of PineCreek. But I do have to fix my green screen. Yeah, I'll prove my self-existence. I'm going to do that soon. But I got to first fix this. I can't do it. Some other time. Yeah, look at my shirt. It's why is it doing that? Because it's black. It's not even close to green. Okay, you got 2 minutes to ask questions because the music is coming on. PineCreek, we shouldn't say that no love would be present if God didn't create anything. Yes, they could say that. But who needs love if you don't exist at all? You are not going to miss love. What's love got to do with creation? If God never created, no one would have even cared about love. And if God's love, you got all the love in the universe already. Don't need more. Did I see citation 11 on the Coco's article? No. What is it? Read. The name of this song is Say Goodnight, which is very apropos for the ending of a live stream. Yes, I'm Canadian. Manitoba. Psychology, E.M. Ethlick. I've felt the presence of Jesus. I truly believe that. But I think it's conditioning. A lot of times it's in the presence of music and other fellow believers. But even privately, I think it's, when you're reading the Bible or when you're very, very sad and you're suffering, your mind will think of things that give you comfort. No, sorry, Joachim West, I don't know. New Zealand, the sexiest accent on earth. Okay, Greg. No, you gotta buy the Poof or Drown t-shirt, Thule. Salim, you live in Ontario? Oh, that's a liberal, sandal-wearing, granola-crunching province. But yeah, maybe I should do a t-shirt, Believe in the Flying Man, with a picture of inspiring philosophy at the bottom. Oh, Great Koukl put a link about using the Holy Spirit to ground faith, did he? See, this is what I don't get. I don't care how intellectual the Christian is. If they know all the... If you're Edward Fazer, yes. Edward Fazer believes in the power of the Holy Spirit. He believes in spiritual warfare. He believes in demons and angels. And when it boils down to it, Christians believe, they'll even admit that they believe because of the Holy Spirit. What did you think of the thumbnail? I thought you had... John, your thumbnail was the sexiest thumbnail I've ever seen in my life. Wow. Everybody take a look at the thumbnail John did on his channel. If you want, even subscribe to John's channel. Don't subscribe to mine, but subscribe to his. But if there is a God, if Christianity is true, I want God to poof me out of existence. Salim, I don't believe because of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit told me in a way that I could be certain that I'm not a Christian. Okay, guys. Thanks, John, for being a good sport and letting me mirror your show. No hard feelings to you or Mike. We're just all trying to struggle together in this world.